Scuderia Ferrari arrives in Las Vegas with an entirely new floor on the SF-24 car, using the last 2 weeks of the 2024 Formula One season to test solutions intended for the 2025 Formula One project. The updates primarily serve to verify the match between the design tools and the track, a task that is not indicative of correlation problems. The test also presents a valuable opportunity to observe the solutions being developed at Maranello for the upcoming year. Ferrari installed the new floor on only Carlos Sainz's car, before removing it at the end of the first free practice session for the Las Vegas Grand Prix. However, this is not a rejection, as the Las Vegas updates were not intended for use in the race, but rather to collect data for the following year. Senior performance engineer Jock Clear explained that it was a way to get a picture of the correlation with the wind tunnel. The well-known Ferrari engineer also pointed out that, while it had implications for the 2025 Formula One car, as it was the tool used for developing everything, it was essentially a correlation test. The test is not due to any particular correlation problems, but rather the normal need to verify the match on track after recent modifications that are rumored to have been made to the Maranello wind tunnel. In general, the work on correlation is never-ending. As with ground effect aerodynamics, there are phenomena that are impossible to replicate in computational fluid dynamics or wind tunnels. An example of aspects that are difficult to simulate are transients, namely the movements that occur when changing from one ground height floor position or yaw angle to another, as well as bottoming out. On track, the floor repeatedly scrapes against the asphalt or curbs, risking triggering bouncing, but simulating this in the factory would damage the wind tunnel's carpet. Jock Clear explains that the floor essentially works at the limit, being the part closest to the ground. The British engineer adds that this represents a very particular aerodynamic challenge, emphasizing the need to gather real data from the car and develop good correlation between the wind tunnel and everything the car does when it approaches the ground. The high-speed corners of the Lusail International Circuit in Qatar would have been perfect to verify behavior at low ground heights, but the sprint format, with only one free practice session, led to the test being brought forward to Las Vegas this weekend. The long straights in Nevada allow for the behavior of the floor to be checked in proximity to the track surface, as at speeds above 300 km per h, the car generates maximum aerodynamic load, pressing down on the ground. Further analysis could be conducted in Abu Dhabi, also utilizing the subsequent test day. In addition to the experiments conducted on track, the solutions tested on the car are striking. The floor brought to Las Vegas is different from the current one, both in terms of the volumes of the Venturi tunnels and the geometries of the outer edges. Specifically, at the rear of the floor, there is a small ramp near the bodywork, designed to capture air to direct towards an opening located on the outside, energizing the flows under the car. This solution also impacts the expansion of the diffuser and represents a significant change, accompanied by a different arrangement of the metal supports. Considering that a floor costs, on average, €500,000, it is clear how important Ferrari's work is in testing the updates by the end of the year. In addition to foregoing further updates useful for the 2024 Formula One World Championship battle, the test also compromises Carlos Sainz's preparation for the Las Vegas Grand Prix, affecting his schedule during the first free practice session. Ferrari is focusing firmly on 2025, but this time the Maranello engineers and technicians are aware that the development of the new car cannot disregard the feedback collected on track during the previous Formula One season. Looking back on the first day of free practice at the Las Vegas circuit, the cards are still very much mixed up among the top teams, as we have analyzed in our previous video. The track proved to be particularly dirty, with a rapid evolution that will continue at least until qualifying, which obviously impacts performance and the optimization of the team's setups. For example, we saw that Ferrari followed a car setup evolution program in parallel with the track's progression, with significantly lower aerodynamics in the second free practice session compared to the first. This is something we've seen happen multiple times with the Maranello team this season on high-evolution tracks, with the clear intention of working on tires and mechanics, somehow simulating a constant level of grip in every session. With such low temperatures, the tires are, unsurprisingly, the key factor in terms of performance, with a high risk of graining for the race. In fact, no one used the hard tire in the first 2 free practice sessions, as everyone wants to save their 2 sets of hard compound tires for the race, as they offer more guarantees in long runs, especially in terms of graining. Generally, the hard tire tends to slide more, but since this is a tendency across all compounds on this track, the Pirelli hard tire offers the advantage of greater consistency and tread durability, limiting the onset of the phenomenon. Looking at the performance shown so far on track by the various teams, the most evident aspect has been Max Verstappen's team's difficulty in finding performance, especially on a single lap. As confirmed by the Dutch driver, the issue with the RB20 does not seem to lie in the balance, but in generating enough temperature in the tire compound, which completely nullifies the car's grip. However, with a rapid evolution of the track expected, the schedule also includes the Ferrari Challenge race this year, the situation could change significantly in favor of the Milton Keynes team, and therefore we will have to wait until tomorrow to assess the evolution of the car's setup and the track, and to see whether Verstappen can attempt to secure the world title in Nevada, or if he will be forced to wait longer. Looking at the data, what immediately stands out in the comparison between Hamilton, Norris, and Ferrari's Carlos Sainz is how Mercedes, after having been extremely fast in a straight line in the first free practice session, became considerably slower in the second session compared to the competition. The impression is that the Brackley team opted for a slightly higher downforce setup, in contrast to teams like Ferrari that reduced downforce between the two sessions. However, this choice seemed to pay off, with Hamilton posting a convincing fastest lap, increasing his advantage over the competition in every corner, especially in the slow section at the beginning of the second sector. On the other hand, Norris and Sainz made considerable gains in the straights, theoretically leaving both setup paths still open. The same reasoning about track evolution applies to Mercedes, and it is realistic to think that by the third free practice session, we will see a more low downforce W15 to follow the track's grip changes. McLaren and Ferrari, on the other hand, seem to have very similar potential, and both were very competitive overall. Carlos Sainz benefited from the new power unit installed in Brazil, and realistically from some slipstream that was missed during the live broadcast, showing impressive performance in the straights. However, both the Spaniard and his teammate Leclerc still showed some caution in braking, which is crucial for lap time on this track. McLaren seems to have a slight advantage over Ferrari, especially in the slow corners of the second sector, but it is the two main braking zones at turn 12 and turn 14 that make the biggest difference between Norris and Sainz. Therefore, it will need to be evaluated at Maranello whether to shift the aeromechanical balance more toward the front end to give the drivers more confidence under braking, or if the usual track evolution had already been factored into the equation that led to the current balance choice on the car. In that case, we may see more aggressiveness and better performance when it counts most, in qualifying and the race. Finally, looking at the race pace simulation, what we notice is that the average times across the different stints are overall very similar, with Piastri and Sainz the best, within the same tenth, followed by Norris and Leclerc. The interesting point is that the average result was achieved by each driver in a different way compared to their rivals. For example, Oscar Piastri started his simulation with very fast times, but then dramatically dropped off after just a few laps, a trend also seen in Charles Leclerc's data. On the other hand, Carlos Sainz, who followed an opposite approach, showed a significant improvement in lap times after starting more conservatively. The impression is that under the conditions seen so far, a slow introduction of the tire makes a significant difference to its lifespan, but at the same time, it has a high price to pay in the early laps. All this considered, the team's strategies have effectively made the hard tire the race tire, yet no one has tested it fully so far, meaning there are still many uncertainties and interesting aspects to be explored over the weekend.